Today we're recapping the autobiographical drama film, Pele, Birth of a Legend. Spoilers ahead. It's the 1958 FIFA World Cup, and as the film opens we get some commentary from a series of news broadcasts about the upcoming game between Brazil and the USSR. The commentary is extremely negative though, with most of it highlighting how the Brazilian team are hopelessly out of their depth. They pile on, all but stating that Brazil has no chance. In the locker room, we cut to Pele. He's 17 and has never played an international match before. The commentary paints this as a bad thing, inexperienced and not ready. Yet somehow we get the sense that this isn't going to be the case. Cut to 8 years earlier, in Bauru, Brazil. At the age of 9, Pele's living in a very poor part of the city, playing football with a group of his best friends. And in case we needed extra proof of how dirt poor they really are, in order to play football, the friends are forced to steal clothes off of random clothing lines and stuff them into socks as to make the football in the first place. But once they have that ball, they go on to prove that money isn't everything. The ball flies between them, bouncing from knee to chest to head to foot. It bounces over roofs and onto sleeping street urchins. And as it does, the boys chase and kick and enjoy themselves the only way they know how. Later that night, it's the 1950 World Cup final between Brazil and Uruguay. Not allowed to listen to the game, Pele and his friends sneak onto the roof of a local tavern, where they peek in and listen to the radio's commentary. Half of the town is in there, listening to the game with bated breath, and when Brazil loses, it absolutely crushes them. Pele's father's among those listening, and hearing his team lose sends him into tears. And when Pele sees him, he promises that one day he will win the World Cup for Brazil. His father seems so proud but tells him to listen to his mother and focus on school instead. So the next day, Pele's cleaning floors at a mansion with his mother. And as they clean, she explains to him why she doesn't want him playing football. Apparently, his father was once a star, but an injury ruined his life, and now they're here. She wants better than that for her son. But when she leaves the room, a group of young boys enter and start speaking of their favorite football players. Pele joins in, claiming he wants to play like local football legend Bile, but he pronounces it Pele. They laugh at him. And when he tries to fight back, his mother intercedes and apologizes. Before we go on, like the video, smash the subscribe button and turn on that notification bell to get that full day of good luck. There's a local football competition happening in town, and Pele and his friends form a team and play. And they might be poor, with no shoes or shirts or even matching uniforms, but the talent they have acquired from years of kicking that ball around the street has elevated them to a level above the other. They cruise through the playoff games, with Pele showing himself to be a star. The only other team that might pose a problem is that same group of boys that were teasing Pele in the mansion earlier. They're older and bigger, and they have uniforms and shoes. They're just a better-looking team. But still, they're clearly intimidated by Pele and his team, so much so that when they find out that they're playing each other in the finals, the rich boy team insults Pele's team openly. They call them the shoeless ones, and everyone laughs. Literally. Even the adults point and laugh. Pele and his team can't turn up the next day without shoes. They just can't. So they devise a plan, spying a truck packed with peanuts. They manage to steal a few bags worth from the unsuspecting owners. Of course, the owners see them and give chase, but Pele and the boys get away. With their load now secure, they hit the streets, determined to sell enough peanuts so they can buy shoes. However, as they try and push their wares, the rich boy team spots them and decides to lay on the insults a little thicker. They do just that too, pushing Pele so far that eventually he slaps the boy across the face. A moment of shock before they all pile in and start fighting one another. It's a real scrap that only prepubescent boys could pull off. Later on that day, back home, Pele tries to explain his bruises to his mom. He claims that his teacher hit him, and for some reason she seems to believe this. Pele's father then intercedes and tells her he'll look into it. Once she's gone, he admits to Pele that he knows about the fight. He was once a boy too. He also knows about the football match though, and tells Pele that if he wants to play professionally, he can't give in to his emotions like that. He needs to let his skills do the talking. Pele stunned, but also thrilled to have his father's approval. The next day is the big football match, where the boys now have makeshift uniforms. The shoes that they bought are far too big for them, but they put them on anyway, as they're still ashamed of how poor they are. With the oversized shoes, the boys can't move properly, and the other team take full advantage of this. Before long, the score is 6-0, and it looks hopeless. Pele's furious. Before he lets his emotions get the better of him, he looks at his father and the crowd watching. The moment of clarity sees Pele throw the shoes off in a huff and decide to play barefoot. The crowd's laughing at him until he gets the ball and dribbles circles around the other team. It's a thing of magic, and he manages to score the first goal. The rest of the team join in, ditching their shoes and being true to themselves. From here on, the game takes a huge turn as Pele and his team begin to dominate. They might not have the look, but they have the skill. 1 goal, 2, 3 goals, then 4. They manage to get the score to 5-6 before the time is called, and although they lose, there's a sense of pride in what they accomplished. However, almost as soon as the game's over, they spot the men who they stole the peanuts from the previous day, and they give chase to Pele and his friends, fleeing into the jungle. Here, Pele and another friend hide in a burrow in the ground. But it begins to rain and a landslide rocks the area. They try to scurry out of the burrow, but his friend gets trapped and is crushed to death. Pele's mortified, blaming himself for his friend's death. His parents worry, and while his mother's telling his father to start taking him to work with him, his father's more concerned about making him smile again. Pele doesn't even want to play football anymore, watching the other kids play and refusing to join in. His father, too, is trying to coax him in by bouncing mangoes on his knees, but still, Pele refuses to join. He's broken. But time heals most things, and sure enough, Pele's natural instincts start to take over again. He begins to train with his father during work. Nothing fancy, just bouncing mangoes off his knees and chest. It's all about getting the feel, being gentle, becoming one with the ball. His father teaches him how, honing his skills and reminding him of his love for the game. We cut forward several years, now to when Pele's 15. Still working with his father, still bouncing those mangoes on his knees, he comes home one day to find a football scout, Waldemar de Brito. He's been watching Pele for some time and wants him to come and try out for the local professional football club. Pele can't believe it. But things start out poorly for him. Although he is a natural talent, his style of play doesn't translate to the professional team. Or rather, the coach doesn't want that style of play anywhere near his team. It's too showy and over the top, not the way the other international teams play. He wants Pele to play a more traditional style and stop bouncing the ball on his knees. Pele tries his hardest to oblige, but he can't play that way, and after several months of trying, he decides to quit. He's at the bus stop about to head home when Waldemar confronts him. He tells Pele why he plays the way he does, the origin of what is known as the Ginga-style football. It dates back to slavery, when the African slaves used music to learn how to fight. Once slavery was abolished, they transferred this skill into football, which is the style that Pele uses, even if he didn't know it. The problem with this style, though, is that it's a little showy, and in the 1950 World Cup, many people blame it as the reason for why Brazil lost. Pele listens to the story, but he still isn't sure what he should do. Waldemar tells him to either have courage to show the world who he really is, or to get on the bus and go home. So Pele decides to stay. The next day is the football match, and Pele decides to try and be a truer version of himself. But he falters, falls down, makes a few bad plays. It isn't looking good, but then he remembers his father and their training. He sees Waldemar watching him, encouraging him. He decides to let go and be himself. And, as expected, Pele proves why he is now considered one of the best of all time. He effortlessly dribbles and bounces and kicks the ball around the opposing team, making it look like child's play as he drives the ball into the goal. His coach, unable to believe what he just saw, calls Pele over and asks, "What the hell was that?" Pele apologizes, and the coach gives him a slap on the butt and whispers, "Do it again." And so Pele does. It's now that Pele really starts to shine. With his style of play confirmed to be effective, he goes about dismantling other teams with style and panache. Soon he starts to make a name for himself, and the spectators can't believe the majesty of what they're seeing. It becomes such that soon he's promoted to the professional squad of his team, playing in the national matches around the country. And still, even though he's younger than everyone by far, he manages to shine. His parents are just as proud of him. And one day, as they're all home, Pele surprises him with a visit and gifts. One of the gifts is a radio, and they comment that they can listen tomorrow to see who's going to be selected for the Brazilian World Cup team. Pele doesn't think he'll get it because he's too young, but still, they listen nonetheless, and sure enough, Pele's picked. He's going to the World Cup. Things get off to a bad start for him. He starts by meeting the team, and they all seem friendly enough except for the fact that one of the players is from that team that used to bully Pele as a child. And even worse, the reporters seem to think that the Brazilian style of play, Ginga, is rudimentary and barbaric. They question the players openly about it, and when Pele tries to defend the style, he's cut off by the coach. After the conference, the coach pulls Pele into his office and tells him that the Ginga style won't work on an international level. They tried that already and they failed. It's now up to them to play the more traditional European style if they're to have a chance at winning. Pele tries to argue, but the coach demands that Pele promise to leave Ginga off the pitch. Despite the coach's insistences, his method of training isn't working. The players are trying to play a more traditional style, but they're struggling to adapt. This all comes to a head when Pele, trying to play the right way, trips and injures his knee. It's an injury that'll put him out for several weeks and might even see him miss the cup altogether. The World Cup begins and the Brazilian team managed to eke out a couple of lucky victories. But the games are brutal and several players become injured. Pele, still not 100% recovered, is forced to take the field for the third game. He's shaken by the idea, throwing up shortly before starting. And again, the coach reminds him to play traditional football. But when he takes the field, when he sees the crowds there, there's a sense of belonging. This is why Pele plays the game. It's a tough game, brutal really. But Pele sticks to the plans, and despite being treated with disdain by the other team, they manage a victory. After the game, Pele bumps into one of the injured players. He's the one who used to tease Pele as a kid. And when he asks him to take the field again, he refuses. He says that his head isn't right, that the entire team is lost, and can't figure out who they want to be. But Ginga, that's what the team needs, just like the day when they were kids. It's the next game, the semi-final, and things get off to another rocky start. But then Pele slows down, takes it in, realizes why he plays the game in the first place. For the love of the game. He starts to play his own way, the Ginga style, and as expected, it befuddles the other team. He dribbles around them like they're children and scores a goal. In fact, he scores 3 goals. With the final approaching, the coach pulls the team into training. He tells them again that if they want any chance of winning the final, they have to play traditional football. They got lucky with the Ginga, but the Swedes will not fall for it. And so training begins, but clearly it isn't working. Even the coach appears lost as he tries to push them all into formation. The following day is a press conference between the two teams, and the Swedish head coach spends the entire time putting down the Brazilian team. He calls them different, demoralizes them, literally points out physical deformities until the head coach of Brazil storms off in a rage. But you sense this was the idea, and the Swedes have already won the game. Morale is low, and Pele calls his father for support. And his father tells him that he needs to unite the team and raise their morale, much like when he was a child. In order to do this, Pele challenges the team to bounce a football from the mess hall all the way through the building and outside to the lighthouse. They laugh it off, but then they start to wonder. Soon they give it a go. And it's all laughs and joy as they pass the ball to one another through the air, on their heads, off their chests, anywhere but the ground. They don't make it, but that doesn't seem to matter. As a team, they feel as if they've already won. The coach sees them as they mess around, and in doing so realizes that he's been going about this all wrong. He tells them that they're indeed different, that the Swedish coach was correct, but also, this isn't a bad thing. It is because they're different that they'll win. So long as they're true to who they are and play their own way. In short, he tells them to forget everything he's taught them and to play the Ginga. The game starts as everyone expects. The Swedes are dominating. They are bigger and stronger and have that mental edge. They score their first goal within 4 minutes, but this time Pele doesn't give up. Instead, he fights, using his Ginga-style skills, and inspires the team to score on the Swedes moments later. Everyone's shocked, or at least the Swedes are. From there, Brazil becomes a runaway train, very quickly picking up speed. The Swedes try to fight back, but something for Brazil just clicks. And although they're playing a different way, it seems to fit together like an intricate puzzle. They score a second goal, and then a third. They move about the Swedish team with ease, seemingly playing a different game entirely. And of course, Pele scores several times. The game ends on a score of 5-2, Brazil's way. And as if on purpose, Pele scores the final goal. He collapses on the ground as the whistle blows, and his teammates flock to him, lift him on their shoulders as the entire stadium screams out for Brazil. This was a recap of the film Pele, Birth of a Legend, produced by Imagine Entertainment and released in 2016. Directed by Jeff and Michael Zimbalist, it stars Kevin DePaula, Soy Jorge, and Vincent D'Onofrio. So many goals to choose from. What was your favorite Pele goal in the movie? Tell us with the hashtag CinemaRecap in the comments.